Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mac Story.
Hello, and thank you for stopping by the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. Today, I'm on trait 22 of 30 as I continue this 30-part series on my book, Blue Collar Leadership and Teamwork, 30 Traits of High-Impact Players. Trait 22 is be competent. Be competent. And the subtitle of that chapter is leverage strengths and ignore weaknesses. That's what we're going to talk about today. Just before I get started, I just want to mention I'm recording this episode on June 10th. I know it won't come out for about 2 or 3 weeks after that, but I got some more in the queue already, and most of those I recorded a couple of months ago, actually. So I'll get on a kick. When I have time, I'll record. Like today, I'm probably going to record the next 4 episodes, and tomorrow I may record 4 more. If that's the case, in 2 days, today's Saturday, tomorrow Sunday, if I record 4 each day, I've got basically 2 months worth. So I do a lot of traveling. I'm actually, Rhea and I, next week, we're going to be going up to Charleston, South Carolina. We're going to look for some megalodon shark teeth. We found some back in February. We like to do that. We like to get out on the beach and look for those shark teeth. And Morris Island, right there at the mouth of the Charleston Bay. You have to get a boat to take you out there. But if you got children or you yourself like to go find some big teeth, they're out there. It costs you about $90 per person to get on the boat. They can take you out and drop you off, and they'll guide you if you want it. We don't really want it, but they're there if you want them. Hang out with them, and you get about 4 hours. So we got 2 days coming up this next week. We're going to be up there back-to-back days, see if we can find something nice. We found a 3 1/4 inch shark tooth, and a lot of other ones that were big, but they were not that big back in February. So that's coming up. So I got to record ahead. Week after that, I'm going down to Panama City Beach, Florida, and me and my son Eric going to go do some fishing. Going to be trying to catch some big bull redfish in the bay down there. I did that last June, actually. Caught a 37, a 39, and a 42-inch redfish, and they basically weigh about a pound per inch when they're that size. So those are some really nice, pretty close to trophy redfish, that 42-inch one especially. So we're going to go back and try that again. My son didn't go with me last time, so that'll be his first time that we've done this together. So that'll be coming up. And then the week after that, we'll be down. Rhea and I will be in Miami Beach at the Eden Rock Beach Resort down there, speaking to the leadership team of Independent Stave. They're not located there, but that's where they're having their conference. They have locations, I think, all around the world from what I've read up on them, but I'll have to do some more reading before we go speak. I don't want to read too far in advance because I forget like I have right now, but I'll read up and study on them before we go down and speak and have a better idea. But they build the big wooden barrels like whiskey and wine and other things like that go in, and pretty interesting process. I do remember reading about that and how they actually still do a lot of that by hand, if I'm remembering right. And anyway, we get to speak to, I think, 30 to 50 of those folks, the top leaders of that organization. We're going to be speaking on Blue Collar Leadership and Culture, that book, Blue Collar Leadership and Supervision, another one of my books, and then also Blue Collar Leadership, Leading from the Front Lines, a third book. So we're going to speak with them for 2 hours. We're going to basically give them a highlight of those 3 books, talk about culture, talk about high-impact leadership, and then talk about the Front Lines book as a resource to help them understand how that's a resource for them to grow and develop their folks. So if you want to check those books out, go to bluecollarleadership.com/download, and you can actually read the first 5 chapters of each one of those and a lot of other books. You can get hundreds of pages of free content right there, because there's also a link to some of Rhea's books as well. But anyway, just pulling back the curtain, sharing a little bit of my personal life with you, what we got going on. But a lot of times people will call me or talk to me and they'll say, especially like a podcast to come out Monday, and this, like a couple of days from now, a new episode will come out, and somebody will call me or message me and say something about they enjoyed the podcast or that sort of thing, and I have no idea what's in it. I might have recorded it 2 months ago. Now, I'm doing good if I remember what's in this one when I get finished. I think I've shared with you before, I don't even listen to these podcasts. I record them, I schedule them, and I go on to the next thing. If I had to listen to them and edit them and all that sort of thing, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast because I wouldn't go through the trouble and the effort to do that. So you get authentic, whatever comes up in my mind. Every now and then, I'm reading quotes and things from different books that I'm sharing with you. Like right now, I'm going to open with a quote here in a second from Peter Drucker. And but most of it is just off the cuff. I kind of got a basic outline. I know what's in the chapter. I got some key points that I talk about, but I add a lot of extra stories to them. So today, trait 22, be competent. That quote from Peter Drucker, this is what he had to say. He says, making strengths productive is much more than an essential of effectiveness. It is a moral imperative. To focus on weakness is not only foolish, it is irresponsible. So those are the words from Peter Drucker, and I want to talk to you about that because it's, that the principle in that quote is absolutely powerful and true. But context is key to fully understanding and mining that golden nugget which it contains. And a lot of people, they read quotes and they think, oh, that's great, or they like it. If they read it on social media, like I share every day, I share quotes and thoughts on social media every day. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, make sure, or if you're not and you like my content, get on LinkedIn, follow me. There's a little bell, a little shape of a bell symbol. You tap on that bell and you can select to be notified whenever I post or of my top posts. If you like my content, you probably won't see them all. So if you click that bell, you'll get notified when I post every day. But the context is key in that quote. At the end of that quote, he said, to focus on weakness is not only foolish, it is irresponsible. So that nugget right there, it only applies in the area of competence. It does not apply in the area of character. And I'll touch on that here in a second. But we're focused on competence, developing your competency. So that's what you have to understand about. You don't want to focus on your weakness relative to competency. You can, but the best you're ever going to be doing that is average. I'm not talking to you about how to become an average player. This series is about how to become a high impact player. So if you want to become a high impact player, you got to figure out your strengths and focus on those. So when it comes to competency, you will excel and become a highly valuable asset to your team when you focus on intentionally developing and maximizing your strengths. With average focus, you will remain average, even if you're focused on your strengths. But with intense focus on your strengths, you will become exceptional. And high impact leaders highly value exceptional team members. You become a highly sought after, high impact team player, and you're going to have a lot of fun in your career. You're going to have lots of options. You're going to have opportunities within your organization to grow. You're going to be climbing the corporate ladder and the pay scale if you want to. And you're going to be able to move around, go to different companies, gain additional experiences, put those together and become more and more valuable, but only if you choose to do it, right? It's up to you. It's your life. When it comes to competency, you can excel and you won't become highly valuable to your team if you focus on developing your weaknesses. And again, I'm talking about competency. not character. We're going to touch on that here in a minute. You can absolutely become more valuable if you develop your weaknesses, but you won't become highly valuable. Even with intense focus, you will remain average at best. But high impact players, they know they should work on both strengths and weaknesses. They also know these 2 secrets to success. And if you've listened to my podcast long enough, you've heard me share them before in maybe a different context, but same principle. I'm talking today about becoming a high impact team player. But 2 secrets to success. Here we go. In areas of character, work to improve your weaknesses because they will hold you in place like an anchor. That's what character weaknesses do. They hold you back. You may be thinking, "Oh, I'm good with my character's pretty good," and you can rattle off a list of things that your character to reveal that your character is good. So whatever you're doing good at relative to character, congratulations. But you need to know this: that's not what's holding you back. You need to find that mirror and look in there and find out what relative to your character are you weak at. Because that's what's holding you back right there. It's not your character strengths. It's your character weaknesses. So don't run around waving your hand telling everybody how awesome you are, even if you're just only talking to yourself. But you ain't living the life you want to be living. Don't miss it. I'm going to say it again. If you're not living the life you want to be living, you need to find that mirror. Forget about your character strengths. Identify your character weaknesses and get to work. You know, when we're talking about be competent, I'm sitting here talking about character in the chapter on being competent. But character is actually a component of competency. Because a competent person who understands about character development is going to focus on their character development. They're going to have a high degree of competency relative to whatever they want to specialize in, but they understand it's really 2 components. And if you, like me, and what you teach is leadership development, personal growth, character and competency, they're all the same. Because when I'm learning and studying and reading to teach better components and principles relative to character, I'm actually developing my competency because that is my competency. But let me talk about that second secret to success. The first one, again, in areas of character, work to improve your weaknesses because they will hold you in place like an anchor. The second secret to success, before I get too far away from the first one, so you can tie these together. In areas of competency, work to improve your strengths because they will launch you like a rocket. So character weaknesses are going to hold you back like an anchor. Competency strengths are going to launch you like a rocket. So when you hit both of those, when you're developing character weaknesses and competency strengths, you're going to really accelerate your growth, your career growth. But you got to figure out what all this means for you. It's different for every person. Sure, some people share the same character weaknesses, but there's some only that you're going to have that other people may not have. You got to focus on those weaknesses. You got to figure out what they are and get busy on them. Same thing with your competency strengths. And you know what's sad? I meet a lot of people, and I hear a lot of stories from a lot of people. They tell me all these things they're interested in, they're excited about. And quite often, it's not the job they're doing. And it's more common than it is uncommon. It's more common for people to be doing a job they're not even excited about. I'll meet a guy who's doing some kind of metal work. He's working I remember a guy, he's working on a sheet metal press. He worked, with metal. His whole department, everything was about metal in this company he worked in. He worked 50, 60, 70 hours a week doing this. But he had a cabinet shop at home. He liked to build cabinets on the side for people. That's what he actually liked to do. So why is he working in a sheet metal plant? Because he's not becoming an intentional. He's not intensely focused on developing his competency. He has, really what he ought to do is have his own cabinet shop. He'd probably be making 5, 10 times more, if not even something greater than that. But he don't have the character to start his own business. He hadn't been working on his character, weaknesses, and he hadn't been working on his competency, strengths. He just kind of going through life. And the thing is, a lot of people who do that, you may be one of them. You may have a job right now that you just do to get paid, you pay in the benefits. But you got some other hobby. It's a hobby, but it ought not be a hobby. It ought to be what you do. And I'm talking to you like it's you, and it may or may not be you. But I'm telling you, I meet people all over this country. I worked with a guy one time, and he was a welding supervisor. And the man loved Harley Davidson motorcycles. I mean, he watched the shows, where they're building custom bikes and all that. And this guy was a hands-on blue-collar guy. I mean, he knows about welding. He could have done that. I saw him about 5 or 10 years after I actually left that company, and I saw him in a convenience store. I was filling up with gas, and I saw him at gas pumps, and I got to talking to him and asked him what he was up to, and he's like, still into these bikes, man. Talking about the Harleys. I said, you ain't ever started you a shop yet? He said, no, but that'd be awesome. But he's just doing some regular job, getting some regular pay, getting some benefits. And a lot of people say, well, if you work for yourself, you ain't going to have no insurance. You won't have no insurance. If you make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year because you're doing something you love, guess what you can do? You can go pay for your insurance. You're paying for it anyway at work. You're just getting a little help with it. But if you double, triple, quadruple, or something far greater than that, your salary, your income, well, you can pay the whole thing. People always look for an excuse. Instead of trying to figure out how to make things happen, they look for an excuse. But let's get back to the lesson. Character plus the appropriate competency equals trust. And see, if you want to be a high-impact team player, you got to be trustworthy. Remember, that was the first trait. Be trustworthy was, the second trait. Be growth-oriented was the first trait. Let me catch up. I done got myself tangled up. Yeah, be growth-oriented is the first trait. Be trustworthy was the second trait. You got to be growth-oriented, but then you got to grow in a way that builds trust. So relative to character and competency, it's got to be the appropriate competency. You may be on my team doing a job. Let's say I'm a supervisor in a weld shop, like I was talking about a minute ago. You have a high degree of character and you have a high degree of competency relative to the work we do. I'm going to have a high degree of trust with you. If I have a heart attack, I don't want you doing heart surgery on me. You still got good character, but you don't have any competency in any competence in that area because you're not a heart surgeon. You ain't never done any kind of surgery. So I'm not going to trust you at all relative to heart surgery. You see what I'm saying? So it's just an example. So when I'm talking about being a high-impact team player, you want to have a high degree of character and a high degree of competency relative to the team's mission and your mission on the team. Napoleon Hill had this to say. He said, it's not more knowledge, it's not more education we need, and it's not more facts. It's a better use of what we already have that we need to have. And what he's talking about there when he's saying that, he's talking about focusing on your strength. your competency, strengths, whatever those are, you're already naturally good at it. You're already naturally interested in it, but you may not be developing it. Just like what I'm doing with you on this podcast. I'm passionate about personal growth, leadership development. I went to college, I got a business degree. That didn't really help me with this. But it helped me get the job that I was needing to get. They required an engineering degree, but I didn't get an engineering degree. I got a business degree. But I had so many years experience doing engineering related jobs that they waived the requirement for an engineering degree, but I still had to have a degree, so I had a business degree and a lot of experience. But all my experience working in manufacturing plants, the competency required to do those jobs, I don't even use it today. I ain't teaching you nothing about any of that today. But I stumbled around, coasted, done what other people wanted me to do and asked me to do and would pay me to do. But I finally figured it out. A lot of people, they never figure it out. But I finally found something I was passionate about, and that was lean manufacturing, process improvement. But ultimately, that really wasn't it. What I was really passionate about was leading those people, leading those teams, leadership. But I didn't see it for a little while until I started reading these kind of books. And then I gave up hundreds of thousands of dollars a year that I was earning doing that. Went to zero because I was passionate about doing this. That's why I read every day. 15 years of daily reading. Guess what I'm doing when I'm doing that? I'm developing my competency relative to what I'm passionate about, where my strengths are. I've always had natural leadership. Remember, leadership is influence. I've always been able to influence people for all kinds of reasons, good and bad. And used to, I did a lot of manipulating. That's influence too, but it's the bad kind. Till I worked on my weaknesses relative to character, so I stopped doing that. But that's part of my story. But when I used to be working in the manufacturing plants and as I was operating machines and I hadn't discovered all this, I was still trying to, at that time, I loved running the machines. I just hadn't found my passion and my purpose. But even back then, I was still doing this without really understanding that I was doing it, because I was intensely focused on becoming an exceptional machine operator when I was operating CNC lathes, mills, and drills. I learned about programming before I had a programming job. That's why I got the programming job, because I was developing my competency. I didn't have to know how to program. They had a team of programmers to program those machines. I wanted to learn. I stood out. That's the reason I got the promotion when the job came available, because I was ahead of the pack. But knowledge workers and service workers, Peter Drucker said this. He says, knowledge workers and service workers learn most when they teach. And when leaders structure opportunities and processes so that people teach what they learn to others within the organization, it dramatically increases individual and organizational learning and knowledge transfer. When I started learning how to run all those machines, because I became a setup person before I became a programmer, so I had to learn to operate about 70 machines. All different types of machines, all different types of control panels. But then I also started teaching people. So then I had to learn it at a different level. I had to take better notes when I was learning, because I knew I was going to have to be teaching. It's just like right now. You're probably, most likely, you're just listening to this podcast. But if a leader had told you, hey, go listen to Mac's podcast on chapter 22, that trait, be competent. I want you to listen to this podcast, and tomorrow I'm going to bring in 20 members of the team. I want you to teach them a lesson on what you learned in that podcast. If your boss told you tomorrow morning you were going to teach 20 people what you learned on this podcast, if you found that out right now, first thing you're going to do is go get you a notebook, I bet. You're going to rewind this podcast. You're going to start listening differently. You're going to pause it. You're going to take different notes. You may not even taking any notes. You might just be listening. But if you had to teach it, you're going to start listening. And I heard Dr. Covey, author of the 7 Habits, say that a long time ago. I've shared it with you multiple times on different episodes. One of the key principles in my life. He said, if you want to truly learn this content, you got to start teaching it to others. I took that to heart, which means I had to learn it at a different level. That's why I've got 15 books today. That's why I've got almost 350 episodes on this podcast. That's why I've got 300-something articles. Because I do what I do with the intent to teach others. Most people do what they do to make money, to get a little better. If you are a formal authority leader, if you send someone to a conference, let them know before they leave, hey, when you get back, we're going to pull some people together. I want you to teach us what you learned there. Give us a 30-minute or a 1 hour overview. You tell them that, they're going to be paying attention while they're at the conference. If you're leading cultural transformation, no matter what level leader you are, encourage your team members to teach some of this content to other team members. You figure out what that means for you. I've got leadership certifications. You can get on bluecollarleadership.com, look at the certification tab, and learn about those certifications. You can get people on your team licensed to teach my content. But then you got to give them opportunities to teach it. You work together with them, figure out how can you accelerate the growth and development within your organization by getting some people licensed to teach my content, and then put people in a room and let them do it. The people who are teaching it are going to get better, and the people who are learning it are going to be exposed to it by people who work with them, who can tie the principles that I'm teaching in my content. The instructor who's certified to teach my content can teach my principles, but then they can share their stories relative to your organization. That's how they make it their own. And actually, the certification comes with a video where I teach them how to do that, how to make my content their own. And it comes with a lot of handouts, fill in the blank type stuff. So you can get serious with it if you want to. Some book study stuff, some book discussion stuff. But I want to share a story from a book called Speed of Trust. It relates to, some people, or I'll just say, mentoring, coaching, and other training processes can facilitate such learning as talking about knowledge transfer and organizational learning. But, I was talking about teaching and training a minute ago, but now I'm talking about mentoring and coaching. Will also facilitate learning. And becoming a teacher of whatever you learn becomes a new life paradigm, how you see the world for individuals who have experienced the power of such a process. So I'm going to read to you a little bit out of this Speed of Trust. There's a little story in there. I may butcher it up because I'm going to change it around a little bit, but not very much. They got some big fancy words in there. I just don't want to use them. That's why. I don't know what they mean. I'm not about to look them up. You ain't got to worry about it. I'm going to fix it and make it simple like I talk. Anyway, so in the book, they're talking about the point is well illustrated in a story told by Marion D. Hanks of an obscure woman in London. After attending a lecture by a distinguished naturalist who was a doctor in his field, she complained that she never had a chance to learn. In response, he asked her what she did. She replied she helped her sister run a boarding house by skinning potatoes and chopping onions. He basically asked her where she sat. She said, on the steps. Where's your feet? She said, on the bricks. He said, tell me about the bricks. She said, I don't know nothing about the bricks. So she went and studied about the bricks. She wrote a paper. He paid her $250 for it. Then he asked her what was under the bricks. She said ants. He asked her what she know about ants. She didn't know anything. She wrote a 360-page paper. It ended up being a book. You can learn and develop your competency wherever you are if you want to. That's the moral of that story. Wherever you're at, you can learn more and do more and be more. Be competent. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.